over the weekend, I called him a greasy walrus.
The meltdown begins. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today's top story here. We got Marc Miller, Justin Trudeau's Minister of Immigration, Justin Trudeau's buddy from his wedding, one of his closest confidants, goes on not only CTV, but also on CBC. And it's what I've done in this episode, which was kind of painstaking, but I've cut the best sections out of both interviews and interspliced them into one interview. Because Marc Miller actually says quite a bit about the whole situation, about Trudeau, how he was feeling. He almost resigned during the Freedom Convoy, stuff like that. We also got a couple other stories at the beginning here. Let's jump into this. So first off here, we got this posted by Table Salt. This shows by proroguing Parliament, the Liberal Party has wiped out 273 reports, bills, and acts. They burned all of their work to try to save their own jobs. So with that, I mentioned the previous video. Bill C-63 is now gone. We can all rejoice. That is the worst one. There's a whole bunch of them you can see. Just look at this. An act to amend the Department for Women and Gender Equality Act. An act to amend Languages Skills Act. They just wiped all of these out, page after page, and you can see this just goes on and on for 30 seconds. Considering everything they were doing was terrible, this is a win. We've got this one. I don't know if this is real. Trudeau resignation specials, $2 burgers. The Raps have fled the ship and now they're sticking their head out. We've got Mark Carney here. Carney for Canada. This is not fake. This is a real website. Let's take a look here. What's his mission? Mark Carney's mission. Oh, it goes to the World Economic Forum. Mark Carney's website goes to the WF. No, thank you. It's not even a page about him. It's just the World Economic Forum. Hard pass. And here he is with his buddy from Telesat Lightspeed. Boy, they're having a good laugh because his stocks went up like 20 million in one day. It was some sort of performance bonus for being the CEO, something like that. These guys are a bunch of thieves. So check out this. Canadians gathered outside of his office here. It says, sang a song to commemorate how Canada feels about the lame duck prime minister. This is hilarious. And side note, what's the deal with the idling of the vehicles here? They got new law in Ottawa there. You can't idle for more than 1 minute. Yet the security detail can sit here and idle all day. Rules for thee, not for me? Gee, someone even said it here. Wait a minute, what about the idling no longer than a minute in Ottawa? Next up, we're jumping over to the interview section with Marc Miller. I'll jump back and forth between Vasi on CTV and David Cochrane on CBC.
The last time we spoke in this very location, or actually, I think you were actually remote, was just a few days after Chrystia Freeland quit. At the time, you were really sure that the Prime Minister should remain on as Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party. Do you think he ultimately did the right thing today?
Yeah, I think, if you're a fan of Justin Trudeau, and there are a lot of them in this country, it's a sad day.
Come on.
The decision that he...
Dude, 16% in the polls, a lot of them.
You're not just one of Justin Trudeau's cabinet ministers, you're one of his very good friends. I mean, what has today been like for you?
Not easy. Justin and I have been best of friends since for about 40 years. This past fall, we started high school together and have been as close as it can be for that period. And for the last 10 years, professional colleagues. And my loyalty to the Prime Minister is a personal one, but for purposes of the role that I play as a minister, one that is professional, and I'm a minister in his cabinet, and I owe him my best advice. Spent probably more time in the last few months speaking to him about we don't talk that much about, as odd as it sounds, we don't talk a ton about politics. But I spent a lot of time in the last 6 months talking about a number of these issues, and this was not an easy decision for him to come to. There isn't a single discussion that I had with him that dealt with his legacy or his own personal ambition. Every conversation was about what any particular path and decision that he had to take would have on Canadians and on Canada. He's a guy that loves his country, loves Canadians, got into it.
Oh, yeah, he really shows that, doesn't he? Does he go down to all the Trudeau towns and knocks on people's tents and see how they're doing in the winter here, freezing their butts off without a roof over their head? And a side note, when Trudeau walks down here, all these papers are flying off. You can see they're empty. They're blank sheets of paper. Here, I thought it was his coloring book.
When I listened to his comments today, it was more of an in my view, what I heard, it can't go on with the internal politics as they are. I cannot sustain the position I have. I don't see a path forward. I know that's what people around him, at least, were telling me, with the fact that caucus, he had basically lost the support of the majority of caucus. Is it that ultimately prompted him to make the decision that he did? And is there any sort of I did X, Y, and Z wrong that led me to this place?
Look, I don't think you can pin it down to one factor. I would say, given his state of mind a couple of years ago, he was probably closer at times to stepping back than he had been over the last 6 months.
Interesting. So he was close to resigning during the Freedom Convoy. He just needed a little nudge over the edge, unfortunately.
Probably not the time and place to discuss that particular time in history, but it's not that he hasn't thought about this in the past. I'll take my advice that I've given to the Prime Minister over the last few weeks to the grave. But I can say this without any hesitation, that the concerns have not been about his political future, but about what is best for Canadians and what's best for Canada to a fault. And you'll probably hear that from the same people, from other people that have discussed his future. The party dynamics are not without concern. They don't disappear overnight with the disappearance, or at least the fact that the Prime Minister will not be taking us into the next election. But it's one that we need to do if we're going to put our best foot forward for Canadians. I think we can do this, and we need to continue to focus on what I believe is the biggest threat to Canada, and it's becoming quite obvious given his reaction today. And Pierre Poilievre is a leader who wants to destroy everything that we have left for Canadians over the last 9 years, whether you agree with them or not.
What have you left? Are you talking about the guys who robbed the jewelry store twice in a week? Are we talking about that? That's what you guys left for us? This guy is so delusional, but he obviously hates Pierre Poilievre. You can see it in his eyes.
And given his behavior today, Pierre Poilievre has been entirely classless, and I think that's what we're going to get with a leader.
Classless, coming from the guy who calls him, and Jordan Peterson, one of the greatest minds of Canada. Greasy walruses. Not the biggest surprise in the world to see these two greasy walruses promote each other's ego. Is this where we're headed? And Marc Miller, what is all this chicken scratch on your name? If we look down here, greasy walruses, wow, this is why you won't get reelected. Exactly. This guy's such a loser. We don't need losers in our government, Marc. And this guy will go down as one of the worst in Canadian history.
They're like Pierre Poilievre. We need someone that can beat him. You know, over the weekend, I called him a greasy walrus.
You did,
which is, a little bit of locker room talk, but to a guy who's personally attacked the Prime Minister, it's mild.
If anyone's a greasy walrus, it's you, man. Come on.
Stuff, but he was as greasy as hell today, classless, and that's what you see with Pierre Poilievre. He had one moment today to show a modicum of dignity, and he failed at that, and that's what we're constantly going to see with potentially a Pierre Poilievre government.
The Conservatives, though, argue that the Prime Minister taking as long as he did, or making the decision in the fashion he did, actually isn't in the interest of Canadians. It's not just the Conservatives, in fact. To be fair, today we heard from the leader of the Bloc, the leader of the NDP, all of whom say, I should say, that they plan at the earliest opportunity to bring your government down. What kind of stability has the decision-making of Justin Trudeau actually provided at this crucial time, as you outlined, facing the threat of economic recession? What actually has served the interests of Canadians in that capacity?
Well, look, these people, and you know it, you've seen it, they will pump, they will bluster and then stand up in the House.
Bluster? Is that the word you wanted to use, Marc? Say the words you actually want to say. He's holding something back.
The Commons and support this. They did that as lately as 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
so
you mean?
That's proof that will need to be tested in late March. We owe it to Canadians to reach out to those parties to see if they would like to work with us and with the new leader. Let's not fault Justin Trudeau for doing what he has done best, which is to fight.
I'm sorry, what? Let's not fault Justin Trudeau for what he does best. Fight? How about we fault him for destroying our country? I ran a story last week coming from, I believe it was a Toronto food bank, where their cost had gone up 10 times because that's how many people they were feeding. 10 times more people were using the food bank because of him, his fight. He can take himself and his fight and go to another country with it. We don't want it.
Instincts of a fighter has served them well. No one is going to reproach his courage for sticking around a couple rounds and fighting for Canadians. That's the situation that we're in, and I profoundly respect that decision. Deciding to step down is one that you shouldn't necessarily take overnight based on the public behavior of 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 20 MPs. It does require reflection. Recall about 4 or 5 weeks ago, or at least early in the summer, a number of MPs were annoyed with the Prime Minister for only taking 2 days to reflect. Some of those same voices were saying it took too long, 3 weeks. So which is it?
Which is it? When you reflect and you're done in 24 hours, you clearly haven't reflected. When you spend 3 weeks when there's looming tariffs, it's way too much. This is not rocket science to figure out.
His birthday, Christmas, holidays with his family. And that's usually an opportunity to step back and breathe. And he had to figure about his political future. So there's a very personal aspect to this, Vashti, and I would really appreciate finishing. This is
Whoa, easy. I wish they had the footage up here. I want to see his face. He's getting extra angry here.
an extremely important decision in the future of the nation. And every single decision point that the Prime Minister has taken has not been about himself, but about the future of the country and his love for Canadians. And I think today was the right day to do it for our nation.
Can you understand how Canadians might think differently? Because you're referencing a period of just 3 weeks. That's since...
Oh, geez, look at this. This is with his fake First Nations tattoo.
His deputy prime minister said she and the prime minister were at odds over the future direction of the country. Since last year, the positioning of your party in public opinion polling has been borne out through 2 very significant losses in by-elections in 2 very safe seats for your party. Like, that public opinion polling has been persistent for a very long time. Those calls that you mentioned from MPs came in October. They came in the summer. It's not like it just arose out of thin air over the last 3 weeks. Instead, what we have now is the Prime Minister announcing this decision at a time of great tumult for the country, as you point out. Is it truly in the best interest of Canadians that he waited this long?
Well, I think the proof is what we were able to do in the House of Commons. I'll give it to you that the last 3 months have been entirely unproductive based on essentially filibustering by the Conservative Party, but we were able to put through...
Filibustering by the Conservatives. Not taking responsibility. No. It's not because you guys have some sort of dark secret in those documents, the SDTC documents, you don't want the RCMP to see. I can't wait for them to crack open those documents. I would love to see this guy put in cuffs and put in jail. There needs to be some serious accountability for these guys for what they've done.
We're able to put through dental care with the help of the NDP and votes in the House for purposes of the Governor General, considering actions like today for purposes of our democracy actually count. And every time we have been able to garner support, at the very least, the New Democratic Party, being governed by polls has its limitations. It's no surprise, and we can't be blind to the fact that we have not been popular. And that's something I think we need to take stock of, and particularly now in the period of the last 4 weeks that we've seen a lot of internal fighting. The question is our ability and whether we deserve to govern with a new leader. And I think that's something that we need to look at internally as a party as we reflect upon who will lead the party into the next election. And that will be...
You guys need to call an election. You guys are greedy thieves, and you know it. This isn't your playground. You guys get to find a new leader and test it out. Let them present themselves to the world. Get lost. Call an election.
A test of the party's unity and our deservingness in front of Canadians.
Not his reasons for staying on while the leadership process is happening, but his reason behind the announcement today. Do you think he made the right decision?
I, as a friend, as a professional colleague, discussed a number of options with him, and it's something that he took the time over. And this last little while has been his birthday, Christmas, and his personal holidays with his family. No one should have to think about their future during those periods, but he's had to.
No one should have to think about stepping down as prime minister over the holidays. This guy is so detached. Are you kidding me? There are people sleeping in the streets, sleeping in tents, sleeping in their campers, sleeping in their cars over Christmas. Mothers can't afford to buy gifts for their kids. Fathers are struggling to put food on the table for their families. And this guy thinks we should have sympathy for Justin Trudeau for having to think about this over the holidays. I worked my butt off to try to get some videos ready for Christmas so I could take a day or two off. And instead, what did I get? I got someone sending me an email threatening to sue me. You don't hear me poopy pants about it. I just buckled up and got back to work. The Prime Minister, though, he's such a victim.
He thinks he still has gas in the tank. Indeed, I certainly think he does. And every instinct that got him to this show, to becoming the Prime Minister of Canada and to fight for Canadians is the instinct of a fighter. And sometimes fighters,
He's not a fighter. Stop with this. Justin Trudeau's not a fighter. He doesn't know anything about hardship. To stop. Trudeau loves this image of being the fighter. He just wants to put it on like a shirt. He doesn't understand the heart and soul that goes into being that. The perfect example is him putting on the Olympic jacket. The Olympians showed up and he's like, give me the jacket. He puts on the Olympic jacket and now he feels like he's the Olympian. This is the kind of guy, silver spoon guy, who's never earned anything in life, doesn't know what hard work is, doesn't know what it's like to go through actual real trials and tribulations here, puts on the Olympic jacket, and he's like prancing around like a big buffoon with an Olympic jacket on, taking photos like he's achieved something that the Olympians did. I'm so sick of Marc Miller and Justin Trudeau.
They go a couple extra rounds, but no one will question their courage or their willingness to keep and stay in the fight.
Do you anticipate that your government will decide or attempt to prorogue Parliament beyond March 24th? And I ask because I was thinking today, as I watched comments around prorogation of 2008, I was working in Saskatoon at the time, of the uproar from Liberals and other members of the opposition at the time over Stephen Harper's decision to prorogue. In the 2015 campaign platform for your party, Stephen Harper has used prorogation to avoid difficult political circumstances. We will not. I think a lot of Canadians think that's exactly what your party is doing right now. Will you commit to not extending that prorogation beyond March 24th?
I think it's untenable, actually, without some form of confidence vote on the last week of March in order for the government simply to function. So I think that it is moot for all intents and purposes. Prorogation has to be used judiciously. I think in this case, for the sake of the stability of the country, no one wants to be in an election with the threat of job-killing tariffs coming in from President Trump. We need someone, and I believe that's why the Prime Minister decided to stay on for this period until a leader is chosen, to make sure.
So that in 2008, Stephen Harper prorogued for 53 days. Trudeau, on the other hand, with his announcement yesterday, his prorogation will be 78 days. Or in other words, 34% longer, or an extra 20 days.
Sure that the country has that stability in being able to face potential tariffs and the response, the measured response that we need to have with our most important trading partner and ally. But seeing a guy like Pierre Poilievre weaponize the Conservative Party was one that gave him the need and the willingness to fight for Canadians, and not see a guy like Pierre Poilievre become Prime Minister, and that invigorated him.
We don't want you to fight for us. We want you to go away.
Also a smart guy. He knows he can't win battles on two fronts, and that's what he was facing, including, I think most importantly, the threat that we face from the United States with the potential job losses, shuttering of businesses if Mr. Trump does indeed impose tariffs. Our focus, his first matter of business coming out of the announcement today, a very emotional moment, was to jump into a very technical Canada-US cabinet committee meeting, talking about the measures that we plan should we need to respond to the Trump government.
If he really cared, he would call election today so that we'd actually have a new leader in place to deal with Trump head to head. Not Justin Trudeau, a guy resigning who essentially has no more skin in the game. The decisions he makes now, it doesn't affect his career. His career's done.
Is this the team that we want to present to Canadians, and do we deserve it? And that's something that doesn't go away with Justin Trudeau removing himself from the equation. This is a party that needs to screw its head on straight, that needs to stiffen up, and needs to rally behind a leader and present a number of policy options to fight a guy who was on display, Pierre Poilievre, today.
But just to focus on your own party for a second, because you said this is a party that needs to screw its head on straight. I mean, is it...
If that's what they want to do, Marc better pull it out of Trudeau's butt first. That would help.
The lack of an obvious urgency to fight Mr. Poilievre? Is it the infighting? Is it the lack of connection on the bread and butter issues that are driving politics right now? Because there have been so many of these things over the years that people have pointed to and say that there was a slowness to respond and a missing of the moment. I mean, is that what you're talking about when you say the party's got to screw its head on straight?
Well, look, if you can fault the Prime Minister for focusing more on Canadians than on the internal dynamics of the party, I think that's probably a flaw.
But the issues that Canadians...
Oh, please. That's like going into a job interview and saying, oh, I'm a perfectionist. That's my flaw.
Like inflation seemed to be slow on, cost of housing, cost of groceries. It was always explained in macro terms rather than focusing on the Canadian family and the Canadian...
And that's fair, David. I think we need to do a better job resonating with Canadians. We have the job to govern, and these things aren't necessarily easy, but we need to be able to speak to Canadians, and we've been speaking to ourselves, and that's just the reality of it. I believe in the Liberal Party. I believe in its ability to work with Canadians to move our country forward. Indeed, the country is much better off than it was 10 years ago, thanks to policies that have been driven by Justin Trudeau. There are people alive today, David, that wouldn't be alive in some other G7 country simply because of the measures we took during COVID. That is Justin Trudeau that drove that through. There are people that are...
Wow, he just took credit for saving people's lives? Are you kidding me? Look at the homelessness. Look how many people are in, and have such severe bad thoughts that they're ending themselves. Look at the MAID program. You bumbling buffoon, you greasy walrus. Don't even say that stuff again.
Aren't living in poverty today because of that. And there are measures that we took with respect to the environment that wouldn't have been taken by a conservative government. That's a legacy that needs to be reflected on.
It's part of screwing your head on straight is finding who's next, right? And, there's 8 or 10 names out there of various degrees. I don't know if you want to announce a candidacy here. You're welcome to do that.
There is not a chance I'm running, David. I can tell you that.
Okay, that was pretty unequivocal. So we'll cross you off the list. But what now? Because there were members of your caucus who have been pushing for the Prime Minister to go for months and months and months. Now he's gone. What do you need to do to reconnect with Canadians? Because it is not just the change in leadership that's going to do it, right? And there's not a lot of runway left. So how do you get from where you are today to being a viable contender to hold on to government or at least opposition in the next election?
I think
it doesn't matter which greasy walrus they put up to the microphone. They're all self-serving. They just want to steal all the fish for themselves.
The question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we the horses that we need to go into battle with? And that includes those people who were quite vocal. I've been quite critical of some of them. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people got things off their chest and were able to do things in private. The silent majority, you can ask yourself how it's feeling today about the
caucus or the country?
Of caucus, about how it's feeling. And certainly we're hearing from people around the country about their disappointment that the Prime Minister is leaving. We will have to choose and have a process that...
Who's saying that? 10 people on X? Give me a break.
...is robust within the party to select the new leader. We need to hear from all parts of the country.
You're coming back to Parliament on the 24th of March, and everybody says they're going to vote non-confidence. And with prorogation, that means a throne speech, which means a confidence vote on that. And if not that, then on interim supply. So there is a deadline you're looking at as a government, quite potentially. So what is the process to get that new person in place? And does it need to be done by end of February, 1st of March? That's sort of a timeline, because going up to the 24th, you're cutting it close.
Yeah, look, lots of people have been pumping their chests or saying they're going to rip this up and do this and that, and yet they voted confidence in the past. That we owe it as a minority government to reach out to them and see if there is a path forward.
Why don't you just say it? It's Jagmeet Singh. That's who you're talking about. Apparently, he's not supporting you anymore. If he goes back on his own words now, he looks beyond ridiculous.
It's unfathomable to me that we can't choose a leader of a Liberal Party in a 30 to 60 day period, whereas you can choose the Prime Minister of Canada or the leader of the country according to the Elections Act in a 30 to 45, 60 day period. So those rules that were not necessarily designed for a minority parliament under this type of pressure can be adapted, but we have to come to some consensus within the party to get that done. Some people will say it'll take 90, 100 days, but
I don't think you have 100 days.
Well, we don't. And otherwise, government essentially shuts down, and that.
This is ridiculous. They should just do it in 1 week. Just have them all come out, give a speech every day, twiddle their thumbs. The greasy walruses can have a vote and then have their leader come out. It'd make way more sense for the Liberals to have their leader decided in the first 30 days and then have an additional 50 or so days to actually be able to speak as the leader. If they run this all the way till March and you get this new leader and then they're there for 24 days, it is going to be hilarious because the party will get squashed and probably lose party status. But it seems like that's what their trajectory is going to be.
Who is the right choice to replace your good friend Justin Trudeau?
My expectation is that we will put forward someone that can take it to Pierre Poilievre, because I don't want that guy in power. And I will do everything I can to make sure that is the right person.
I can't wait till Poilievre's in power. I can just stick it to him.
Where do you think the party needs to go sort of between those two poles of where it is and where it's been?
It's a fair question. In Canada and other countries to be defined by the zealots in our parties. Yeah. At the same time, being able to be...
Are we talking about Mark Garretson? Plebs put up a declaration trying to get Mark Garretson as the next leader. That would be hilarious. There you have it. Marc Miller, a.k.a. the Greasy Walrus. That's right, Mark. You're getting that name. He thinks Trudeau's been putting Canada first the whole time. He's always thinking about Canadians, except for when Canadians are sleeping in the streets.